Welcome back. Episode 138 of the Grouch and the Brainstorm. And today we have another guest speaker. Here in November, December, we have a lot of guest speakers because we're tied up for the holidays and our regular everyday jobs and taking care of those and families. And so we get a lot of guest speakers, and whenever we can, we want to publish. We want to get a good story, and we want to get that story out there. And, you know, the regular shows me and Matt do, those are great, and we do have some experience and some hope and some strength that we can share and tell our stories. But, you know, it's just us two. And whenever we have a chance to get someone else's story, we always get it. Every Wednesday night at the Koala Club, not every Wednesday night, every last Wednesday of the month at the Koala Club in Bossier City, Louisiana, they have a guest speaker. And it's usually one of the members of their group, or someone will come in from a local clubhouse or someone local, and they'll tell their story. And this week, we finally got Larry W.'s story because he was the guest speaker on Wednesday right before Thanksgiving. So we're going to take this opportunity to listen to what Larry has to say and share his experience, strength, and hope, and I look forward to hearing it. So, Larry, why don't you go ahead and take this away?
Thank you, everybody. My name is Larry. I am an alcoholic. Sobriety date is April 4th, 2014. I come to this meeting about 7 nights a week, and I get a chance to share, and you can't get me to shut up. Now, here I am. I have an opportunity to talk for the whole meeting, and I'm like, wow. I am new at this. I know I've been around a little while, but so please cut me some slack here, if you will. I'll do the best that I can. Give you a little family background. I was born to a young GI, Air Force, and his wife, she worked for Bell South as a switchboard operator at that time. Eventually, there were 2 more boys and my baby sister. We all drank alcohol coming up. But my sister and one of my brothers do not drink at all anymore, and I have one brother who still drinks. I was the only problem drinker in the family. And, excuse me, as a child, my dad, drinking the way that he did, it was nothing for him to leave a beer sitting out, and I would toddle over to it, you know, and take a sip off of it. And nobody ever had a problem with it. As a young kid, it was kind of cute, you know. And up until I was in junior high school, nobody ever thought a thing about me, you know, taking a drink off my dad's beer. But I never drank alcoholically or drank to get a buzz or anything at all like that. I didn't know anything about it. And I just saw my dad drunk a few times. We weren't a church-going family, although my mother's mother was a stout religious lady, and then my dad's parents, both of them, Church of Christ, and they went twice on Sunday and then on Wednesday. And if we stayed there for whatever reason, we would go to church. And I really didn't have much use for God at an early age due to my grandfather passing away. He was my hero. And he had a heart attack and died at 65. And I always thought that, you know, God had done me wrong by taking my pap away so early. And that's the way I grew up, considering God. He had no more power than the Easter Bunny to me. My first alcoholic buzz came at 14 years old. And we had just moved back to the States from Tokyo. I'd done junior high school and started high school there. We came to Chesapeake Bay to finish out my dad's tour of duty, and culture shock. The Japanese people were not westernized at all, and I didn't know what I was getting into when I got here. So starting school, the kids talking about alcohol in class, and the girls dressing the way they were, you know, back in the 70s, braless and all that kind of stuff. And to me, it was a whole new world. And talking about alcohol the way that they did, well, I was curious about it for sure, and I had a little bit of experience just drinking the way that I just described. So I was determined to try this out for myself, and all the kids talked about Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill. Well, never wanted to go along with the crowd. I had to get Boone's Farm apple wine. And I talked one of the older fellas into getting a bottle of it for me. And I hid it behind the trash cans until my buddies and I got together and we decided we were going to go camping out in one of them's backyard. And so we had that set up, and I told them, look, I got these 3 girls over here on the other side in the officers' quarters. We were NCO. These girls were officers' daughters. And they really didn't want to go because, officer kids and us NCO kids, they thought they were so much better than us. And I told them that they're not like that. Come on, let's go. So reluctantly, they came along. And I took my little bottle of wine with me in a brown bag. And there we went. And we got over to a secluded spot where we could stand around and talk and pass the bottle. My buddies took a hit off of it, and I could tell that it wasn't really what they expected, and the girls just flat out didn't want anything to do with it. So it came my turn again, and it was different, but it wasn't bad. I could deal with it. And I passed it to my buddies. We were going around. Everybody wanted to quit, but I kept drinking it. And, it wasn't very long. I began to feel something coming on. And then it came to me that this is why people drink. And I had a really nice mellow buzz going. And I became very wordy and worldly. And I decided that this was the answer to my problems. This was everything I needed to be cool and be okay. Because I always kind of felt like there was something a little different about me, and I never did really quite fit in. So, wouldn't you know it, about that time, the APs came by, that's Air Police, military police, and ruined our little party. And there I am standing there with this bottle of wine in my hand like a 14-year-old wino, and my first instinct was to get somewhere. So I took off, I jumped the fence, and I ran all the way back around. I got to the tent, and I waited on my buddies to come back. Well, they didn't show up for a while, and then I heard my buddy Steve, I heard his dad come out the back door, and I'm thinking, oh, this is just fine. And he stood outside the tent, and he goes, well, how's everything going in there? And I said, oh, well, it's going pretty good. We're crashing out. I'm about to go to sleep myself here, and I'm puffing up the sleeping bags, try to make it look like somebody might be in there, And he pulled back the cover on the front of the tent and said, Larry, Steve, and Dennis are at the police station. I'm going to pick them up. I think you need to go home. So I went home and I let myself in. Well, the next day was Saturday, and the base commander called my dad at his residence. Now, I got to tell you about my dad. My dad was very strict military man, had an unblemished record. His goal in the Air Force was to make the rank of Chief Master Sergeant in 16 years, carry that rank for 4 years, and retire at 20 years in 1 day. And he was up to 1 year left, and we were there. He was stationed at Langley there in Virginia, working for the CIA headquarters, and he was a member of the IG team there, Inspector General, and he was very proud of that. And so he called me downstairs, and I never saw the fist coming. And he hit me like a farmer would punch a cow. It was right between the eyes and knocked me smooth down. And he kicked my butt all the way up the stairs, and as he was slamming the door to my bedroom, he said, I might not ever let you come out of here again. So I'm laying there thinking about everything, licking my wounds. And I thought, there I was, someplace I shouldn't have been, hanging out with women I had no business hanging out with. The police got involved. I got caught in a lie, and I got my butt kicked. This is the life for me. And then so that's how it began. And, I didn't start drinking alcoholically right away, but my dad was TDY a lot. And whenever he would leave, usually for 3 to 5 days at a time, my mom still drank. And I could, sneak a few beers, and they'd go to bed, and I'd sit up and watch TV and drink a few beers, and I started smoking cigarettes. and I was really enjoying being big, and time went on, and my dad did retire, and we moved to Louisiana, of all places. You could not believe he wanted to move to Louisiana. No offense, guys. It's home to me now, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But at that time, I was in love with the coast, and living right on the bay was, for a teenage boy, was absolutely the bomb. So we got here. My dad retired at Barksdale and started another career. And my drinking got out of hand. I was starting to cut school a lot. And I was an excellent liar at getting out of school for whatever reason to go over to the liquor lounge over on Barksdale Boulevard and buy beer, take it home and drink it before my folks would come in. But my dad got to where he was thumping me on a regular basis. And at 15, I ran away from home. He had punched me out the night before, and I determined, that's it, I'm out of here. So I left, and I was going back to the East Coast. I caught a train to Vicksburg, and it was filthy, so I started hitchhiking from there. I got kicked out of Birmingham for vagrancy. I left home just like a boy in May in Louisiana would dress. Converse tennis shoes, T-shirt, tank top, and a pair of blue jeans. I had a Bulova watch, a pack of cigarettes, and a Zippo lighter, and maybe $5 and less in money. I got beat up by a grown man in Atlanta, and I was having a lot of fun so far, right? But I made it back to the East Coast in about 5 days, and in a year's time, so much had changed. My buddy Steve, he had gone on vacation as soon as school got out with his parents. They went to West Virginia, and my buddy Dennis, they had moved away. So far things weren't looking so great like I expected. And I stayed at Colonel Oliver's house that one night, and ironically, his daughter was one of the girls that were with me that night. We were drinking the wine. And he sat me down and he talked to me, son, you really ought to consider your future and maybe getting your act together. And yes, sir. Yes, sir, I understand. Yes, sir. I'm going to do that. Yes, sir. And so the next day I left, and I wasn't really sure where I was going except east because my buddy was in St. Albans. So I was going to go there, and in St. Albans, I sold my Bulova watch to a man who owned a gas station. He gave me $35 for it. And now the night before, I survived a really cold storm. And in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains, dressed the way that I was, I nearly froze to death. But I made it through the night, and I sold my watch, and I went to Army Surplus, and I got myself a field jacket for $5. And it was the weirdest thing. I had a little bit of money in my pocket, and I was feeling pretty good, and I had a jacket on, and it was a beautiful day, and it just a good day, something about it. I had a thought for a minute because I was feeling so good. I was going to call my dad and say, look, I apologize for running off the way I did, and I've got money to come home on, and maybe we can work things out. No. And I stuck my thumb out and kept going. And this man picked me up. 1963 cream-colored Chevrolet Impala station wagon. He was kind of a strange guy, too. He had a speech impediment. And we got to talking and going along, and at one point I told him, I really need a job. I don't have any money. I had that $30, but that's it. And he goes, a job? You need a job? I can get you a job. And he took me out to this pasture out in the middle of Timbuktu, and there were tractors everywhere and all these flatbed trailers with all this colorful steel iron all over them. It was a carnival, and he knew the guy who was running it, and he hooked me up with the guy and said, he needs a job. And the guy says, well, he's underage, but I tell you what, if anybody asks, you just tell them you're traveling spot help. And I said, that's fine. He paid me $40 a week. Now, at that point in my life, I had never been drunk. And I'd only had sex a couple of times. And all that was about to change. Man, before it was over with, I had a 14-year-old girlfriend, I had a 17-year-old girlfriend, and I was bunking with a 45-year-old woman. And I would wake up, I guess the worst time was I woke up in somebody's yard, and I didn't know where I was at. And I remembered how I got there, but I remember I needed to get away, and I didn't know how to get to the carnival. And this kid was out throwing newspapers. And I said, hey, man, where is the carnival? He said, it's not open. And I said, I know I work there, but I got to go to work. He says, well, it's over there. So I Forrest Gump my way to work. And I tell you, Samuel Clemens could not have written the story that I got to live as a 15-year-old boy that summer for about the next 6 months, 5.5 to 6 months. And I told you about that 17-year-old girl. I met her in Columbus, and I left the carnival, and we were heading east, and west, and we got to Cincinnati, and we got picked up by a truant officer because school had started back, and he took us into juvenile, and that was the end of my little outing. Her parents came and got her the next day, and a couple of days later, my folks had sent the money for me to come home. And I came back home and went to school. And I did okay when I got back here. You know, I would go to school some. When I went to school, I did okay. You know, I could make B's and C's, but I wanted to drink more than anything. I was getting better and better at it. And time went on, and about when I was 19, I made a really bad decision. I got married, and that didn't work out at all. I cheated on her. She cheated on me, and neither one cared. And after a few years, she had it annulled. But while that was going on, at 22, I met these two girls from Havre de Grace. That's up around Baltimore. And I had never met anyone like these two here. They were crazy, and man, I just fell for them. And Bobby was 20 and Lindy was 24. They were stepsisters, and they did everything together. You know, they were stepsisters, so it was okay to frolic. And they liked me, so we frolicked together for a while. And I especially liked the younger one, Bobby. And I don't know really why, because I never had a reason to carry a pistol. But it seemed that all my buds would carry a pistol. And I had a Buntline 22, and I kept it with me. And I got fired from my job, and I got another job, and I got fired from it after 2 weeks. So Bobby and me went out here to Bodcaw, and we were going to shoot that pistol. And I really impressed her. She was scared of guns, and I've been around guns all my life. My dad used to take us hunting a lot, and my brother and I both had our own guns, and I'd impressed her with my skills. And she goes, you know, you handling that pistol the way you do, and I know you're not scared, you know, we could rob somebody. And I looked at her and I said, you know, have you lost your mind? I mean, I never even thought of such a thing in my life. And that was the end of it. But you know, man, I was taking my own stuff and selling it. I started stealing from my dad. And about a week later, I approached her and I said, you know, let's do it. And I didn't know how we were going to do it, except that, you know, you drive the car and we'll figure something out. So we drove out here to Louisiana Downs, and I figured, you know, we'd just rob some rich people. And it was a Lincoln Continental, and I saw 3 suits get into it, and we stalked them back into Bossier. And they went to one of the better motels in Bossier City Turns out it was owned by the mayor of Bossier City. And I had her let me out, and I said, "You wait here." And I went and did it. And I came back and hopped in. I was scared to death, man. God, I couldn't believe what I just did, you know. And she was laughing, and she was about to have an orgasm. She was laughing. She just really got off on it. And I was sick. And I said, you know, to get it out of here, we went and we hid the money. And I took some of the money and I went and got drunk. And when I got drunk, I felt okay. But then the next morning, I had to wake up and face what I had done. So I went and got drunk again so I could feel okay and not think about it. And so we did it again. And a little bit after that, you know, we did it again. And we kept doing it. And my 23rd birthday, 1979, came around. And we went over to a place called the Shade Tree Lounge in Shreveport. And man, I got pilled up and drunk. And I like pills. And when I take pills, I wasn't looking for anything specifically. I was taught if you take pills, anything will get you off and make you feel different. You just have to take enough. And the first time I really got stoned on pills, I didn't even know what they were. I took 10 the first time, and I felt something happening. And about an hour or two later, I took 10 more. I took 38 pills that afternoon, and it turned out they were Dilantin. I took 38 Dilantin. Now, you know when you're watching TV back in the old days and you had to turn the channel manually? And between channels, you get that staticky fuzz and snow. Okay, when I took pills, that's where my brain went. I could see and I could walk around and talk, but my brain was between channels. And that's the way I was on my birthday that night, plus with all the whiskey we'd been drinking. And she was driving. We were coming back on the other side, the east side of Bossier, to her sister's apartment. Now, there was this gas station on Old Minden Road, and we'd been listening to it on the radio about people kept trying to rob this place, and they kept getting caught. And we were coming back from like I said, we were going to her sister's apartment after we'd been out partying, about 1 or 2 in the morning. And I said, "Look, there's that gas station we've been talking about on the radio." And she goes, "Yeah, I know. They just don't know about us, huh?" We kept going. And I said, "You know what? Turn this car around." And so we went out, and she, remember how girls used to wear them pantyhose? She had a skirt on. She was wearing pantyhose, and I took my pocket knife off and I cut one of the legs out of it. That was going to be my mask. And I walked up to that gas station, and they were on the phone when I walked up. There was nobody else there. I got a pistol in my hand. I walked through the door, made eye contact with them. I said, "I forgot to put on my mask. Hold on, I'll be right back." And I went out, and I put the mask on, and I came back in with a pistol out. And I didn't even think, I told you I was between channels. It never even occurred to me that they were on the phone when I walked up, and when I got off the phone, when I walked in, they were off the phone. Of course, they said, "Hey, you know, call the cops, I'm about to be robbed." And they're going, like, "Are you serious? I mean, you don't even look like a robber." I said, "I've got a gun in my hand, I'm pointing it at you, and I want your money." And so, okay, so I got the money. And they tried to engage me in conversation, and I'm sitting there going for it. Like, you know, after this is over, I'm going to come back and see you later. And I looked up, and there was a bubble top out on a parking lot. And I said, "Oh, man." So I turned around, and I ran out of the place. There was a Bossier City cop coming in the door. I hit the door and knocked him down and kept going. I knew if I could get across Old Minden Road up to that big cement ditch, I'd get away. And I stepped in that little shallow ditch on the north side of Old Minden Road, and I fell down. And when I fell down, the cop car ran into me as I was getting up and knocked me out. Well, girlfriend saw me, and she thought they killed me. So she freaked out and went home and told her sister. And her sister and her came back up to the police station and turned themselves in and told them everything we'd been doing. If she hadn't have done that, it would have just been me, and she would have never gotten in any trouble at all. And the police were telling me what happened, and I'm not going for it, I don't have any partners, just me. I'm stupid, I was drunk, whatever. And they brought her in so I could see her, and I asked her, what did you say? And she goes, well, I told him the same thing you did. So I had a dislocated shoulder and I had a big old knot on my head. And they took me to the hospital and patched me up and brought me back, put me in jail. Then they sent us to Benton, to the 5th floor at the courthouse over in Benton. And my court-appointed lawyer, first words out of his mouth to me were, Mr. Wern, I hope you're ready to spend the rest of your days behind bars. And I knew it wasn't going to be good. And I said, how much am I looking at? And he said, 594 years. And I said, I can't do that. And I wasn't being funny. It's just the only thing I could think of to say. So, fortunately, she didn't have any kind of criminal background. I didn't have any criminal background or anything like that. We had decent families. We were okay. We were just stupid. I was a drunk kid. And they let me plea bargain to 2 counts. The people in the first one's in the suits, and then the one at the gas station. And she got 7 years, and I got charged 8 on each of mine, and ran them wild with 16 years. And man, I've never even been to jail in my life, let alone, I went from the first time I got in trouble, here I am, I'm in jail. I go from jail straight to prison. And I didn't know anything about prison, except what I saw on TV, and this is not going to be good. And it was very hard. And I guess about year 4 or so, I got into a hustle there with this guy from Huntsville. He was in the prison out of Huntsville, Texas. And he knew how to do some kind of metal work and making belt buckles and rings and such, out of nickel and, just junk. And so we started doing that, and I was his helper. And we grew from there. And then this other man came in. He transferred out from Angola. And he came there, and he showed us how to make gold teeth. Now, if you're in prison and you look around, all the brothers have got gold teeth. It was a fantastic hustle. So my partner, Jerry, he got out, and this guy who showed us, he got out, and there I was. Well, I'd saved up my money. I was able to get a centrifuge and a burnout oven. And, if you read books, you can learn anything reading through books. And I learned how to make gold teeth so I could refine what this man from Angola had taught us. And I knew I could do a better job than what he did. And so I got the stuff to make it with, the burnout oven, the centrifuge. And I became an orthodontist. And I became a rich white boy in prison. It was $50 a pop, you furnish the gold. And man, I wasn't just slinging them every day, but it was a really good hustle. And I was legitimately making jewelry as a good cover too. And I had all this gold. These guys, I had high school rings, wedding bands, you name it. These guys, they had to have a gold tooth. And it didn't take, you're talking about a half a pennyweight to make a gold tooth. And these rings were like 9 pennyweights. So I had a heck of a stash going on. So I was making this stuff. And it got good enough that I was called to security, and Major Cantrell told me, you can't have this kind of money. You're going to have to send it out. So I did. And but the thing about it is, having the money that I was making, I decided to have fun. And I was buying pot. I was smuggling pot in, and LSD, and dried mushrooms. Those were my favorites, and that's how I did my time. And I can remember going out one day. I had 7 years locked up, and I was thinking, it was that day was 7 years. Great day. I don't know why 7 years seemed so special. And I walked out onto the yard, and I thought, man, I still got 3.5 more years to go. I didn't think I was ever going to get out of there, man. And it was right after that I got complacent. I got busted for contraband. And I let a free man walk down on me, and that was not good. I got a street charge for assaulting a corrections officer and possession of marijuana. Fortunately, that's all I got. But I hated prison so much. I couldn't believe that I got myself there in the first place, let alone here I am going to face another street charge, which they said 2 more years. And I was like, well, they ended up dropping that. When they put me in the dungeon, I walked in there, and you can't go in the dungeon with clothes on. You can wear your shorts, that's it. And no books are allowed, no radio, anything. You got the big concrete slab, that's your bed, and you got a stainless steel urinal, stainless steel sink. And there I was, and I had a lot to think about, and I really hated myself. There was one sheet from the Bible laying on the ground, and I really had no use for that. But after about 5 days, I was pretty hard up for recreation, so I picked that sheet up, and it was the end of John 2 and the beginning of John 3, one sheet. So I even read that. I read it front to back, back to front, upside down. I mean, you can imagine being that bored. And that night, I had the best night's rest that I'd had maybe since I'd ever been locked up. And I didn't really pay much attention to it, but that morning when I got up, I felt so good. No talking in the cell block, but I put my hands on the bars and I was hollering. I didn't know who was in there, but I was hollering out, "This is Larry Warren." And, hey, man, anything you need, those days are gone, man. I'm squaring up, nothing from me. And I said, I'll still be working in the record, in my shop, but that's it. Everything's legitimate from then on. And I meant it, and I did it. And when I got out, I turned over a new leaf. Something happened to me. I was down that low, and maybe reading that page from the Bible did something. I think it made a connection, but something made a difference. And those last 3.5 years, they had Votech. I jumped into Votech. I learned to weld in less than 2 years. I completed that program, and I went to work for the instructor. I started taking college correspondence courses at LSU and Baton Rouge. And they had a furlough program. Out of 1,000 men, they selected 2 to go on furlough, and I was one of them. And all these weird things started happening, All I did was square up and quit giving the cops a hard time, and realize these guys didn't hate me. They just had a job to do. And I changed my perspective, my attitude, and things started turning around. At 5.5 months, David Goss called me in. He was the head of the counseling there, and said, well, you got 5.5 months to go. We're going to send you to a halfway house in Monroe. In whenever it was, January, I think. That was the greatest thing that had happened to me in 9 years, or 10 years. And sure enough, they sent me to the halfway house. I worked 12 hours a day, 12 hours a night, 7 days a week. And I got paid through their business with the halfway house. Pete Caldwell, the owner, he had $100 cash for me behind a fuel desk every Friday night, which was sweet. Nobody knew about that. And I had a good hustle going on selling used tires. These guys would come in and buy new tires. If it was in good shape, the old ones, I kept them, I locked them up. These guys come in and looking for a get-home tire, I'd sell it to them for $50. And these guys, these truckers, a lot of times they give you a tip, so a lot of times I get $100 for it. And I took the light switches off the walls and I stuffed the money in there and started hiding it. When my mom would come see me, I'd sneak it out and take it to her, and she'd carry it home and saved it and put it up for me. 3 days after I got out of prison, I bought an IROC Z, so I had wheels. And things looked pretty good for me, you know. I'd straightened up. I was going to LSU over here in Shreveport. My first semester, I made the dean's list. I was welding over at Benton Creosoting Works. I became assistant manager over there within a year, and I was doing pretty good. And I ran into a girlfriend, I said a girlfriend, and she wanted to know, you want to get high? And I guess it'd be okay. I didn't really care to get high, but so we smoked a joint. And it did something to me, you know. I got to thinking about, I could probably handle wine. So the next thing I know, I was at Thrifty Liquor, you know, trying to find which wine would work for me, because I didn't really know too much about wine. And I started drinking wine, and it was okay. I was still okay. I was working out. I was in pretty good shape. I got married, and she had a good job. She was working over at Cook Yancey in Shreveport, and she was a paralegal. I was a Class A welder out at Beard, and we were doing okay. We were buying a house. We had a little bit of property, had a new barn, had a new truck. She had a new SUV. I had a Harley Touring Glide. I had a 79 C3 Corvette, and I had a 66 Ford stepside pickup truck. And I looked at the barn, and I was so proud of my horses. And my drinking got worse and worse, and I lost everything. Lost the house, everything. I came back to Bossier with a pickup truck and a motorcycle, and everything else was gone. But that was the only way we could get out of it, was to walk away from everything. So I started living in an apartment over here. I got another job. I was working in a dental lab. I was doing their casting for them. I wasn't an orthodontist, you know. So I was drunk and living in the apartments. I was getting by, and it was getting worse. And I met another girl who I'd known since she was a kid. She was she was the only child, and we started going out. And both of her parents died about the same time, and they left her with everything. And a nice house over in Old Green Acres on Tillman. And she said to me, look, Larry, I've got all this stuff. Why don't you get out of here and come stay with me? All you got to do is keep some little pizzly job, and that's all I got to do, and we're going to be okay, and we'll spend the rest of our lives together. And she looked good to me too. On top of that, I thought it was a pretty good deal, you know. We got together, and she was my girlfriend for almost 20 years. And then I got fired from another job. I was drinking on the job, and they knew it, but they didn't really care. And my drinking had gotten so bad, I finally even got fired from there. And my girlfriend tried to help me get another job, somebody she knew. And I went into the interview. I was drunk when I went in. And the guy who I was talking to, he stopped me and said, hold on a minute. He hit his intercom and said, Doris, come in here, please. And Doris came in there, and he goes, I want you to listen to this guy. Okay, Mr. Warner, go ahead and say what you had to say. And I realized, you know, these guys are building a case on me. I'm fixing to make a big ass out of myself, and that's all they're interested in. So I told the guy, I said, look, man, I'm sorry I wasted your time. And I got up and I walked out. And I had one of those little O'Doul things, you know, trying to pacify myself to get through this energy. And I threw it out in their parking lot. And I sat there in my truck, and I realized I'm an alcoholic. I can't even get a job anymore. And I can't stop. And I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know where to turn. And it was one of the loneliest feelings I'd ever known in my entire life. So I went to Thrifty and got another beer. And about 2 weeks later, I got another job interview, and I could barely get through it. And the guy knew there was something wrong with me, but because of a friend, I think he was going to try to help me out. And I was supposed to go back over on a Friday, and I think he was going to put me to work, but I never made it to the interview. I couldn't stay sober for 2 hours to go back, and I fell apart, and I started to hallucinate. And I knew I was in trouble, and I didn't know what was really going on. I'd never tried to quit drinking before. So I was going to walk to a friend's house because I knew I couldn't drive. Like that's ever stopped me before, but I wasn't going to drive like this. Like I said, I was beginning to hallucinate. And I walked to Benton Road to where Triple J was on Benton Road, and I fell out. And a guy picked me up and brought me back to the house. And I wanted to take me to the hospital, but I wouldn't let him do it. Well, my girlfriend's daughter had come and spent the night. I didn't know that. And I went in the house, I sat on the couch, and she came in and she looked at me, she goes, "What's wrong with you?" I said, I quit drinking and I don't think I'm doing too good. And she goes, "We're going to get you to the hospital." And I went, "No, we're not calling any freaking ambulance. I'll go to the hospital, but we're going to somebody carry me." And she wouldn't drive. So anyway, I called my sister. She worked at LSU. She's corporate, not clinical. But she said, "I've been waiting so long for this phone call. I've got everything together, all the paperwork. You show up in the emergency room. That's all you got to do. Get yourself here. Don't go anywhere else, and do not take another drink." Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So I went there, and then I began to go into convulsions and contractions, and I couldn't control my functions. But I got to the hospital, and then they wouldn't let me in because I couldn't write. So she had to go back upstairs to the law firm and get power of attorney so she could sign for me to get me into the hospital. And I stayed there that night, and the next morning the doctor came in to discharge me, and he said, "I'm going to let you go." He says, "But I recommend that you get some help. And I've seen your type come in here, and I know that when you leave here, there's a really good chance you're probably going to go to Thrifty or go to the convenience store and get a beer as soon as you get out of here." I said, "No." I said, "Man, I'm never drinking again. I'm done. I don't want anything more to do with it." My girlfriend come and picked me up. That was Saturday morning. And we went straight to Thrifty. We didn't go to Thrifty. We went to a Circle K, rather. And I went in, I got a Diet Coke. They didn't have Diet Dr. Pepper, so I got a Diet Coke. And I kept that bottle for 5 years. When I came in here, I had that bottle. And I just refill it with water. I finally threw it away, but I went to CADA. I met Gina at CADA. I have a good story about Gina, at least it's good to me. She was very helpful to me while she was counselor there. And I still got that paper that you gave me after all these years. And when I got out of CADA, I needed some place to go, and everybody was telling me, "You need to go to AA." So I looked up AA, and my sister said, "Well, look, there's a place over on Shed Road. It's called the Koala Club." And she started telling me where it was at, 4809 Shed Road. Shed Road. Koala Club. I've been by there 1,000 times. "Well, that's AA?" And she goes, "Well, apparently it is." I said, "Man, there's motorcycles parked in the parking lot. That's some kind of bar or something, isn't it?" Anyway, so I came over here, and it was about a little after 10 in the morning, and I'm pretty sure, because things were still pretty fuzzy for me, I'm pretty sure it was Joe and Phil standing over in that corner. And I approached them about, coming to AA. And they said, "Well, we just had a meeting, but there's going to be another one at 12. I said, "Okay, I'm going to go get a haircut and I'll be back." And sure enough, I came back. And I got a chip that first day at my first meeting. And I was sitting where that man in the blue shirt is. And they got time for chips. And they said, "Anybody got 1 month?" And people sitting around, "Dude, you got a month." "What?" "Oh, yeah, I've got a month, yeah." So Anne Marie sitting where Penny is, and she handed me a chip. She hugged my neck, and she whispered in my ear, "That was one long damn month, wasn't it?" Yes, man, it sure was. Yeah, somebody understood, and I felt pretty good about that when I went and sat back down in my chair, and I thought, I'm going to come back. And I did. And the next day, I met my sponsor the next day, and we took 2 steps that morning out in the parking lot out there. When it came for step 2, and he came to believe that a power greater than me could restore me to sanity, I told him, I said, man, I got a problem with God. And he goes, well, look at it this way. It worked pretty good for me. I've been here 28 years. I said, okay, I'll buy that. Okay, okay, I'll go with that. And so step 3, became willing to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him. And I said, how can I turn my will and my life over to something that I don't even know anything about or really want anything to know about? And he said, well, you go home and think about it, and come back, we'll talk about it tomorrow. So I came back the next day, and it was the same thing. I said, I'm not getting anywhere with this. And he said, I'll tell you what, how about if I loan you my God? Okay, because I did want to do this, and I didn't want to drink anymore, and I said I wasn't going to drink anymore. So I accepted that, and we moved along. I did my 4th step the best I could. I couldn't comprehend anything out of the book. My sponsor tried to help me. Bless his heart, man, he did it wasn't him, it was me. Just nothing would register. I was between channels. And when I said I was through with it, he said, bring it to me and we'll see. And I went to his house, and he looked at it and scratched his head and said, man, I've never seen anything like this. He says, but that's okay. I know how to make it work. Because I didn't even have any character defects, Bullshit. Yeah, I got you. So that's where I was at. And I had my own stuff laying out on the table, and we were going over it, and he would say this, and he'd say, do you see where you were selfish? Well, everybody's a little selfish. He goes, I know, but Larry, you're a lot selfish. Well, that's a matter of opinion. And we got talking about another thing. Well, let's look at this. And he goes, can you see how prideful you are? Well, everybody has pride. Larry, I understand, but you are over the top. And that's how my 5th step went. And for some reason, he wanted to settle on my pride and my ego and my vanity.
Good choice.
And that's where we got stuck. But he wouldn't let me off the hook, and I would deny it, and he wouldn't let me off the hook. And he would, Larry, look, man, you wrote this. I didn't write this. And I said, well, I understand. See this word that I used right here? I know what it means, but, it can mean more than one thing. I'm playing semantics now. I think what we need is a dictionary. Well, by golly, I've got one right here. And he wouldn't let me off the hook. And this is how it went. And finally, after a while, when I realized that he was right, I had to concede. And when I did, he said, I don't think there's anything more we can do now. So give me your big book. And he says, I'm going to mark in your big book, this paragraph is a 6th step, and this paragraph is a 7th step. And you start reading here, and you do everything it says. Right now, go home and do that. And even I couldn't screw it up. So I went home, I got in my shop, and I read the first part upon returning home. I even took my big book and put it on a shelf so I could take it down off the shelf. And I read it, and did I make mortar without sand? Yes, I had my sand and my mortar, and it was slick concrete, and it wasn't rough or rugged or anything. I went all the way back to the first step. And when we are ready, we say something like this. I had my book because I didn't have it memorized. I had to read it, my Creator, I am now willing you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. Good. So I've done step 7. That's what the book said. I just did step 7. Now what? I guess we'll start on 8. And something began to happen to me, and it scared me because it was something big, and it was coming on to me very hard, and it scared me because I didn't know what it was, and I thought I was going to start hallucinating again. And I thought I was going to go back to the hospital. And then suddenly, it dissipated into some kind of calm peace. My fear went away, the anxiety went away. It was like nothing I'd ever felt in my life. And whatever, it had a hold of me. And whatever it was some kind of material that fit me perfectly from head to toe. And whatever it was made out of, I can't describe it. But it gave me this sense of peaceful existence like I'd never known in my life. And I was looking around my shop, sitting on my stool, and I said, could this be God? And I looked over at the west wall, and I said, Larry, I'm using first person now. I said, Larry, I think God is in this room. Larry, God is here. God is here now. And when I realized what had just happened to me, everything negative that had ever been in my life disappeared. And I wanted to climb on my roof of my shop and holler out to the neighborhood, do you know what just happened to me? But I didn't. But I ran into the house. My gal was just getting in from work. And I don't know if she could look at me and see that something was different. But I said, why didn't you tell me? And she said, I tried. And that's not what I was looking for. Well, my mother only lived like a block away. So I ran to her house. And she goes to church. And I ran into her house. And she's watching some television show like she does. And I said, Mom, I've got God. God's in my life. I felt God. And it's the most wonderful thing that ever happened to me. And well, that's good, Larry. While you're over there, will you take the trash out? And so I took the trash out, and I ran back to my truck, and I got a little flip phone, because that's all I had, and I dialed Wayne, and I told him what happened. And, man, I was so excited, and he was so happy, and we were laughing, and he was laughing. Batman, he laughed all the time. I think he laughed just about as much as he talked. And, it was just the most wonderful day that I believe I ever had. And I couldn't wait to share it. And he told me, why don't you hold off on that right now? And I didn't know why. He said, because I thought everybody in here, that happened to them. And he said, it's not always like that for everybody. And if you go in there now, they're going to think you're some kind of crackpot, just calm down. And so I did, and I sat on it. And he said, when the time is right, you'll know. And I said, well, then why would this happen to me and if it doesn't happen to everybody? And he said, I don't know. The only thing that I do know is that I've never seen anybody as far from God as you. So, okay. And I went with that. And I kept up with steps 10, 11, and 12. I like 11 especially, seek to improve my conscious contact with God as I understood Him, as He understands me. And every day, I've never missed my inventory at night. Prayer and meditation every single morning. I've never missed it. Whatever this was that happened to me saved my life. And I do believe Jesus Christ is my Savior today. And for what He did for me, I want to know everything that I can possibly learn about Him. And I spend every day trying to improve on what I know. And I know I say some crazy stuff sometimes, and I get it wrong a lot. I know that, but I'm really trying. And And I do things like I'm doing today, try to forget myself no matter how nervous I am sitting up here, and try to help somebody else if I can. You know, I don't have a whole lot of sponsees. I've been puked on. The police called on me. Whatever can happen. I've written guys 4 steps because they couldn't read or write. Had to get CDs for them to listen to, CDs rather. Guy who can't hear, and that's nothing more annoying than what? What? But you get through. And we all just do the best that we can. And I'm going to shut up because I know Randy's fixing to walk out of here.
And that was Larry. And a little bit about Larry. I got to be there when Larry came in the rooms. I got to watch him come in and grow and learn. And I see him every chance I can. Every time I go there, Larry's there. And his story just tells another tale of what it's like to get sober and to live a sober life. And I'm glad we got to hear Larry's story. Larry, I appreciate you hearing it. Appreciate everyone out there in the audience. Hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving. Looking forward to Christmas, and stay sober. Stay sober. If you feel a little antsy, a little worried about the holidays, go to a meeting, call a sponsor, call another alcoholic. Do something better than nothing, and stay sober. So from Reno, Nevada, I've been Mike, and we're always here, the Grouch and the Brainstorm.